Hi everybody, it's Margie Drube with the Five Cities Homes, the Drube Team here with Cheryl Tolan at Placer Title. Hi Cheryl. We're going to talk today about what is escrow. If you're from out of state, you maybe never used escrow. You might have used a real estate attorney. California escrows are managed by title companies or worked with title companies like Placer Title with Cheryl Tolan. And they're a third-party neutral entity taking instructions from the principals, who are the people involved in the event. So the buyers, the sellers, the refinancers, the banks, the agents, etc. But they are neutral. So Cheryl, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what is escrow.
Well, you did so good at that. I'll take questions now. Cheryl, I'm Cheryl Tolan. I am the business development rep for Placer Title in the Five Cities and Santa Maria market. And so escrow, you hit it, the nail on the head right there with escrow. So I always like to use the visual analogy that it's like a bicycle wheel, and the middle is where escrow is, and all the spokes coming in would be, you know, the listing agent, the selling agent, the home inspector, roof inspector, etc. Everything's coming into that neutral hub, right? Our escrow team. And from there, we're going to be the ones that will be dispersing the funds. I mean, let's face it, when you're buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, it usually involves large sums of money. So it's imperative that you have a neutral third party, known as the escrow holder, to handle and transfer all those funds and all the documents that need to be recorded as well.
True. And when we talk about money, we're talking about the earnest money deposit, which is also completes the contract. You make an offer, and the seller has a property, that's their part of the deal, and the buyer has money, that's their part of the deal. In order to get a legal contract, you have to have a meeting of the minds and an exchange of entity. So money and property. So that deposit, it could be a personal check, right? But it has to be held at escrow, who has no attachment to that money whatsoever. And you guys are that entity, right?
That's correct. So when the buyer comes in and writes that contract, you know, to purchase that property, they want to give what is also known as a good faith estimate.
Good faith deposit.
Good faith deposit. Did I say estimates? I did.
Yeah, you're saying that's super old fashioned, lady. It's really the earnest money deposit. But yeah.
I was gonna say I'm dating myself because I've been in this so long. So the earnest money deposit, yes. It will come into escrow, and typically we need to receive that within 3 days of the acceptance. So that can be a personal check. That's the only time really during escrow that we want to take a personal check because of the good funds law.
Right.
Typically it can be wired, or it could be a certified cashier's check. But yes,
perfect,
we hold
perfect.
that.
And then when we talk about escrow, we're talking about a timeline of the escrow begins when the contract, well, okay, so a contract is accepted by buyer and seller. They both acknowledge and agree, right? And then we open an escrow with you guys or with a escrow company. And then you say, okay, now we need what from you? What happens next? Once we say, okay, well, here we go.
So when that escrow is open, we're going to order a preliminary title report, which is going to be very helpful for that buyer. Once we get that preliminary title report in, which can take anywhere from 48 hours to 72 hours, just depending, sometimes sooner, then our escrow team is going to put together an escrow opening package for that buyer and that seller. And that's going to include the preliminary title report. It's also going to include other forms that the buyer will need to fill out and the seller will need to fill out. And typically we want that information back within 5 to 7 days after we have sent that out.
And that's a lot of personal information, right? Stuff they might not be all that excited to give a person they've never met before, right?
Exactly, because one of those forms is a statement of information. And this form is routinely used by escrow holders for the buyers and the sellers in this transaction where there's going to be title insurance issued. This completed form is going to help our title department be able to determine if there's any items that are affecting that property or that person coming into that transaction. So it could range from liens, court decrees, bankruptcies, whatever that may be. And so that statement of information helps us rule out that it's any of our principals in this transaction.
Right, and that could be things that are child support orders, or a lien. Maybe you have solar on your house and you didn't even realize they were going to lien. Think of something else. What else might be a secret thing that pops up like that?
Well, I mean, when you mention child support, that's a huge one, because if we have someone that doesn't fill out that statement of information and they try to bring that in closer towards the end of escrow, and then we find out that that buyer, you know, maybe has a child support lien out there, that can take upwards in a normal market, in a normal time frame, not in a pandemic. It could take up to 21 days in order to get that child support demand. And so now we're in different times where a lot of county workers and state workers aren't working in the office, they're working from home. So, but you hit it. I mean, bankruptcies, I'm just trying to think of what else could be on there. Those are the most important ones. Mechanics liens, maybe things of that sort.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So when you get this packet, if you're a buyer or a seller and you get this packet, they can call you guys, they can call their agents, you know, contact, if you don't like question number 3 because you've never had to answer that question before, call the escrow or call your agent and say, hey, is it all right if I give them this information? Because there's a lot of stuff now. There's wire fraud issues that you have to fill out, you know, forms that protect you that way. So it's going to feel very, very personal, the information you're giving, but it's a huge asset you're acquiring. So all of these things have to be absolutely correct before we move forward.
Absolutely. And the only person that sees that statement of information is going to be our escrow officer and our title officer. That's it. And then those are just those documents. We, you know, use the proper care in making sure that they are destroyed, you know, that they're not seen by anyone else. And sometimes we've been able to just do the last 4 of a social on those. Some people feel really uncomfortable giving out all that information because it will ask you for like the last 10 years of employment, the last 10 years of where you've lived. Sometimes we can get by on the minimal information for that.
Right, and that's a lot of identity verification, because the last thing you want is someone to steal your identity and just go around acquiring loans in your name, and it's not even you doing it. So it's very imperative that all of this information be handled safely, appropriately, and it's very necessary.
Absolutely. And you know, the one thing you mentioned when you talked about wire fraud, so in the older days, we would have our wiring instructions in the preliminary title reports, and that has since been removed. And so when we are speaking with your principals, as you know, when we're going to send them wiring information, we don't send that to the agents at all. We're working directly with that principal. And then we also tell them that we will never, ever change wiring instructions on them, never. So if they get an email, which there can be, their emails, you know, emails can get hacked and things of that sort, they're always to call us if they have any questions, if they're going to be wiring funds.
Absolutely. So when we were talking a minute ago, you said escrow and title. They're 2 different things. Although escrow is the overarching governing body is the Department of Insurance, right?
Correct.
And the title insurance is the title, right? The title insurance insures the title to be accurate or correct and yada yada. And
Correct.
Escrow is the bucket, the hub that manages all the pieces. So they are 2 different things, even though we sometimes say, oh, drop it off at escrow or drop it off at title. That they're 2 separate things, but they work together.
We work together. So you'll find in our community here where we live, it's title and escrow together. If you get into the bigger cities down, you know, Southern California, you can have independent escrow companies, and then, you know, you have title companies. We do both. We're escrow and title, but here we call it escrow.
Yeah, we do. Thank you for that, for making sure that we're all on the same page. And then when we get close to closing, tell us about this closing disclosure.
Okay, so the closing disclosure is what the lender is going to send out to that buyer so that they can approve the fees, everything that they're going to be charged. So there is a 3-day period on that closing disclosure from the time they acknowledge that the buyer acknowledges that closing disclosure. They have 3 days, if they want, before they can sign loan documents. It is real important during that time that there's no other financial, any money differences in there, because if there is, then that has to go back to the lender and back to underwriting. So they would get the closing disclosure, the 3-day waiting period, and then on the 3rd day they can sign their loan documents. Then they sign
So
their
if during, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So if during that time they say, oh, well, let's get a $5,000 credit for that one window, then we start all over with the 3 days. And that is a mandatory California hold. You can't skip that. You can't waive it. You can't voluntarily do nothing. You have 3 days. So when we get to the end, it's really got to be the end, correct?
That is correct. You know, you as the broker and agent, you're going to want to make sure that if there's any credits or anything that's going to be done, that is done prior to that closing disclosure going out.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, we talked a little bit about all those packets and requests for information. One thing, and I know this is a sticking point sometimes, but expand on this a little. When our clients get something from escrow or even their lender, it's imperative that they respond immediately. Don't leave it on your desk for a week and don't think about it for 10 days. If they ask you for something, how fast do they need to get that back to you?
You know, I would say as soon as possible. I mean, that's just, do it, because we're all busy. We all have busy lives, and we open that up and we think, oh, you know what, I'm going to do that this evening. And then you get home and something comes up at home, and before you know it, the weekend has come or 10 days has passed. So I would just say, get that back as soon as you possibly can, within 24 hours.
There you go. So we've kind of talked about the beginning, the middle, and the end. So tell us, what are some sticking points that happen that really can hijack, we'll say, can hijack an escrow? What are those things?
Well, one, don't change your marital status when you go into escrow. You know, that can change it. You have to be super careful about that. So I would say probably don't get married or don't get divorced during that time.
We're buying a house, let's get married.
Be careful about the bank account. So when we spoke about that earnest money deposit earlier in the video, let's say the husband is going to purchase a piece of property as a married man, sole and separate, but he walks into escrow and brings us a personal check that's a joint checking account with his wife on there. So, you know, you don't want to do that.
That muddies the waters pretty hard, doesn't it?
Yeah, that'll muddy. But I mean, that's kind of early on, so we can kind of fix that. But I mean, those are some things, you know, and the statement of information, we already covered that. Like that is important that we get that right away, so we can clear up any issues that there might be with anything against the parties, the principals concerned. Also, bank accounts for trust. So let's talk about this. If you have a seller that owns that property in a trust, they are going to want to make sure that they have a bank account in that trust name, because when we close that transaction and it records, any proceeds from that is going to be issued in that trust name. And it's happened where we issue it in the trust name and then they come back and they're like, I can't cash this check. You need to make it out to me. And we can't do that. And before COVID, you could probably open up a checking account in that trust name in under an hour. But now after COVID, it would probably be a little more problematic. And that we don't want that to happen, especially once it's already been closed. You know, folks want to get their money in the bank.
Right. And a lot of people get a trust and they put all their belongings in it just like they're supposed to, but they never even think about opening an account in that name because it's just our house, it's just our this, it's just our that. And you know, so that is a really good thing to bring up because, I mean, I have relatives who I'm pretty sure don't have a bank account in the name of their trust, but they own property that is in that trust.
Right.
So does that apply as well to, let's say, because escrow is for refinance as well. If you hold a property in trust for a refinance, is there an issue with a bank account since it's just a refinance?
You know, it depends on the lender. Some lenders will not refinance with a property in a trust. So during escrow, you'll have to come out of the trust and go into a different way of holding title. And then you can go back into the trust after the refinance is closed. But it could be, absolutely.
And you guys handle all of that, taking it out of the trust, doing the handling the refinance coordination, and then putting it right back in the trust for them, right?
Right. The escrow team will take care of that. I mean, there might be an exception where we couldn't do that, but for the most part, our escrow team is going to notify all the parties if there's a situation about that.
And let's end on recording. What is recording? Tell us what that really means.
So Placer Title Company is going to record all the documents pertinent to that transaction. So the deed of trust, the grant deed, anything that's going to secure the lien against that property, and also the vesting of that property. Our escrow team is going to make sure those documents are sent to the recorder's office, and we do everything electronically now. And we disperse the funds to the appropriate parties, and then escrow is officially closed. And
escrow's closed, and they own the new home.
And
right?
You take them and give them the keys.
Woo! Keys. That's the winner. Well, great. Cheryl, this has been a wonderful educational tool for buyers, sellers, and people who are thinking of refinancing. If you're a first-time home buyer and you've never had an escrow, you can have a great team at Placer to walk you through the process, because it's just, it's a lot. It's a big deal, and it's important. So we're all here to help make our buyers, sellers, all the principals involved have a clean, enjoyable process. Sometimes it's stressful, but we try to take the stress and let you just have the process, right?
I was going to say, and stress-free. We do our best, because, you know, they don't do this every day. We do it every day, but they don't. And we have some handy home buyer booklets and seller handbooks as well that I could send to you to give to your clients or your prospects. We have it in electronic format and hard copy format that has a lot of valuable information in it for them.
Oh, I'll have it attached. If you want to attach the PDF to this video, then Alicia can make that available to people.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, Cheryl, thank you for taking time out of what I know COVID has turned into a crazy time, because we all are just one day we don't know what day it is, and the next day we're so busy our hair's flying out. So
right, we're up in a clip to keep it from.
So thank you so much for taking time. I really appreciate it. This has been very helpful, and I think it will be very educational to the viewers.
Well, you know, I really appreciate you. Thank you for asking. It was an honor to be on here with you. And thank you for all you do in our community. And, you know, you're out there changing lives, you know, one family at a time. When you're helping them, you know, sell their home or move into their home, you're helping them realize goals too. So you work very hard. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, we'll talk to you soon on another topic.